I see that's going. Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen with the PowerPoint and the agenda. Okay. Pull up the agenda next. And Jim, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, I call this meeting to order. My name is Jim Mack, part of the task force, and I will let the other members introduce themselves.
I am Ron Kumetz, Chief of the Alberg Fire Department.
And we have some others on the line today. I believe Liz Tracy, who is at her desk, so won't be able to communicate verbally at least. And Martha Morris also. Who else do we have?
Emily, and she's unable to talk to us. She's working also.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks to all of them for participating.
And move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes needed for the agenda? Hearing none, I'll move on to the approval of minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I guess we'll push it on to you now, Dom.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks everyone. And we'll get going into our material for today. As a reminder, this is the Tier 2 working group meeting. Tier 2 is addressing technology and shared systems-based regionalization. We have had several meetings and are proceeding through our tasks of evaluating various work items related to Tier 2. Quick look at the schedule. And this shows the Tier 2 working group. Let's see. Oh, actually, this shows Tier 2 working group going on for a couple more weeks towards the end of August. So I think that will be, hopefully that will be all that we need. I would anticipate we need another meeting after this. And I believe we already have that scheduled. I guess we'll get to that
August
at the end.
15th.
Right. All right. Great. So we should be some of the other working group meetings. We may have to change the schedule, but that'll be up for discussion at the full task force meeting next week. For the Tier 2 activities.
Hey, Dom, before you leave the schedule, can we chat a little bit about it? So, Jim and Ron, our thinking is. If we have 2 more meetings, and so, next week, the next meeting, we should be able to we should have completed all of the option review, minus any research that comes out of today's meeting. You'll see there's still a couple of action items outstanding, but most of them outside of what we get today are completed and advancing to a completion. So, our thinking is by the last meeting, prior to the last meeting, here comes Michael, by the way.
Great.
Yep.
Well, welcome, Michael. We're just getting started. Thanks.
We're talking about the schedule. We have two more meetings on the schedule left. And I'm, thinking that, by the final meeting, prior to that meeting, if acceptable to you, Dom and I would put together a draft presentation, summarizing, this working group's recommendations to present to the task force. So, of course, those are going to be compiled based on what we've already, the options that we recommended, that you have recommended. to summarize and any outstanding items between now and then. But our thinking is that we create a draft presentation, and at a minimum in that final working group meeting, that we go through them, we customize, we modify them, customize them however appropriate, and then that becomes this working group's deliverable to the task force for their consideration, full task force, and that in the first task force meeting, scheduled meeting after we conclude, your working group will present your recommended your recommendations, and I'm wondering, does that work? Would that approach work for you?
That sounds good to me.
So we would anticipate
Yeah,
that
no, I
being,
think that's a good idea.
okay, great. We would anticipate that being, well, we have our next meeting, as we just mentioned, on the 15th. And then then we can work on preparing that presentation. The last task force meeting in August will be, let's see if I do the math correctly, it'll be the 27th of August. So at that point, we would hope to be able to present to the task force.
And with that said, what are the? I'm not looking at my calendar. Maybe Elizabeth has it in her head, or can look at the calendar. What are the dates of our two next meetings, so that we're sure that the dates that we have on the calendar still work for everybody?
We have one
August
scheduled for the 15th. Right.
But there
All
is
right.
not an additional one scheduled after that.
Right.
All right. Okay.
So why don't we see how far we get today, and then see if we need to schedule another one beyond the 15th. That sound good?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Rick, anything else?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Again, these are the items that we've discussed, that are part of the Tier 2. And as we've discussed before, our goals are to determine priorities and potential recommendations related to all of these key technology areas to provide to the full task force for their consideration. The ones highlighted in green are the ones we've discussed to date. Our last meeting, we spent most of the meeting on LMR, and we'll probably touch base on that again today, and then hopefully move on to the last couple, which are the VCOM and cybersecurity. And let's just going over quickly, this is items we have discussed previously. We discussed the CAD, which included mobile, AVL, also included discussion of RMS. We discussed logging recorder, telephone, fire station alerting and paging, GIS and mapping, over-the-top applications, and non-call processing systems. And here I have an update, and this will also lead us into the action items. But one of the action items was related to this, to investigate what work could potentially be handled as a shared resource at a regionalized process. And based on previous discussion we've had, and we recommend, this is also being handled in the Tier 3 working group meeting, so we'll probably rely on them. But the non-call processing duties that were identified by MCP during their interviews and dispatch center visits are shown in the table here on the left. The administrative/HR activities, alarm system activation, jail activities, records, security camera monitoring, other support services for the municipality, vehicle release, walk-up window, and warrants. And then on the right side of this table, we identify, based on our previous discussion and also input from MCP, what we believe can be regionalized or shared. And we believe ultimately it will depend on what the physical regionalization plan is recommended by the task force. So working group 1 will probably also tackle these recommendations, but these are what we feel makes sense to forward on to them. So essentially, the administrative and HR activities, we believe some of that can be regionalized or approached with a shared resource. Potentially, the EA alarm system activation could also be done. That certainly, if it's done off-site, that certainly requires a reliable system and process. So I think that would have to be looked at fairly closely. We recommended that certain items, like I'll group them together, like the jail activities, security camera monitoring, vehicle release, walk-up window, those generally we believe should remain local for that for each center. But other things such as the records, municipal services, and warrants could be shared or could be regionalized or handled via shared resource. In fact, based on some of the discussion, warrants used to be handled by VSP, but we understand that is no longer the case. Any thoughts or additional considerations on this?
So I think it, in terms of like eventually presenting this to the legislature and local officials and stuff who will see the results of what we generate.
Right.
I think at some point it's worthwhile to strongly suggest that we need to start regarding dispatchers as dispatch professionals and not clerks who happen to talk on a radio.
Right.
And so a lot of the stuff that they're doing is really detracting from their ability to work with our increased call volumes. I mean, just this year, my agency, typically we have 120-ish calls a year. And as of, I think, the beginning of June, or maybe it was the beginning of July, we're up to like 85 calls already. So I think we're all seeing increasing call volumes. Certainly the dispatch centers are seeing increasing call volumes. And so, having them do a lot of it, being expected to handle all of this other stuff is simply unreasonable.
Right. We certainly agree, and we want to make sure that message comes across as well. That should be definitely be part of the recommendations moving forward.
So
And we've
if
also
I could follow up on that, Ron, I appreciate you bringing that up. The tier 3 operational working group is also shares your thoughts, and so do all of our guests today that are representing the dispatch community. Raising the status to a professional level of the telecommunicators, it makes a lot of sense. It also not only does it raise their status as a professional labor force, it's good for the community in helping us attract a talent. It also will better provide them better access to additional compensation benefits, particularly retirement and others. And in professionalizing this, I think it's going to raise our ability to attract, greater, additional talent to this community. So I appreciate your position on that. I don't know if it's shared by Jim or Michael, but I think the tier 3 group agrees with your position on that.
Jim is noticeably silent.
Well, I've been talking on the tier 3 group, so
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Tom,
Ron and Jim, of course, are members of the tier 3 group as well.
yeah. So I do have one clarification here. When we say as administrative and HR activities could be regionalized and shared, I'm not really sure what HR activities we're talking about in particular, because it all depends. HR is kind of unique to any given dispatch center or PSAP. Depending on labor unions and structure of a given jurisdictions. So I'm not really. I want to look a little bit closer to what
Okay.
MCP says. I mean, administration, yes. But I think, I'm not really sure exactly what they mean by HR. So I'm going to take an action item to take a look at that, because it may make sense to break that down a little bit more, because those two categories are very broad. The other items, I mean, you could put a pin in it, what those mean, or they could be clarified better. But I want to take an action item to take a look at it to see if it makes sense to break that down a little bit further, so that we could say, yeah, these items, these administrative responsibilities could be shared. These others might need to remain local.
I think that administrative HR activities kind of references towards, depending on how the governance lays out.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I look at it.
All right. Good point.
I look at it as this is nitpicky stuff that we don't need to focus on at this point, and you can't, and you really can't, right? I mean, until there's an actual plan of what's going to happen regionally and what those regions look like, there's no way you can get down to a point of walk up window and vehicle. Like, we don't even know ultimately what this system's going to look like. So I think this is nitpicky stuff. We move on, and this could be figured out in a matter of 10 minutes once the plan is fully, executed.
Makes sense.
All right. Thanks, Michael. And that brings us to the action items. Let's see, this is kind of small, so let me help us out here. Hopefully legible, or at least close to. So these are our action items. We've got two slides on this, and based on Televate's review, hopefully the majority of these we can close out today. I'll let Rick address action item number 1 and 2, I believe.
I think we went through these last time, did we not?
Yep.
Yeah, I presented these. I presented those at our last meeting. I'm happy to go through it again.
Well, I'll ask the working group. Are we? Do we have confirmation we can close out these 2 items?
Yes, I believe you can.
The only thing I don't know about is, I'm not, and Barb was, she said she would provide some additional detail. I don't know if she'd shared it with the PSAP community yet on Rapid SOS. And so I'm not, as I mentioned there was enough licensing for all the PSAPs, and there were some additional, and they hadn't come up with a plan yet on, who might receive those additional Rapid SOS licenses or what they were going to do. And she didn't know. And that's the only item that I, don't know an answer for, but I'm sure she's sharing it with PSAPs as it becomes known to her.
Okay, thanks, Rick. All right, we'll close out items 1 and 2, and 4, I believe, was addressed last time as well.
So can we go back to 3? So 3, we're just waiting for them to dive into getting us more information into PowerPhone, and because that is a interest of mine to improve the system as far as triaging calls.
Okay, well, we did address this, I believe, as well. There's a summary of Power Phone, which is now total response. Michael, have you looked into that at all? The total response product information.
No, I have not. I can dive into that.
What's your specific question about it as to whether or not this should be promoted to be used at a broader level?
Well, I just think we need a statewide medical triage, an actual triage process and protocol. So I'm not familiar with the total response. If that is that similar to Power Phones? Maybe Jim can answer that.
Yeah, it's similar product to the Power Phone product.
Okay.
It's just they've rebranded as Total Response.
Okay. And the state is looking at that at this point, or
they
No,
are
not that
not,
I'm
to my
aware of.
knowledge. That
Okay.
could be a recommendation coming out of this working group, of course.
okay.
I think the general consensus was Total Response was one option out there. The APCO product that we currently use can be expanded with the response portion of it that we don't currently have or use. So there's multiple options out there for that.
Right. Okay. So I think, Dom, I think that would be at least my recommendation is that we look into what is out there and make a recommendation on moving forward with a medical triage protocol system that is more robust than the current system in place now.
Okay. All right. Great.
So Michael, do you want us to do a little bit more digging on that so that we can, at the next meeting, we could provide you some additional insight into that, or, because we could be your legs on the ground to provide that and to have a discussion with Barb or whomever.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
All right. Thank you. Ready to move on to the next view?
Yep.
Next group of action items. Okay. All right. Rick, I believe you reported on 4 and 5 last week as well. Are
Yes.
there any additional questions on those? That was more on, again, on providing of the Annie and Allie data that we discussed. Okay, hearing nothing on those. Action item 6 was regarding the non-call processing activities, which we addressed in the previous slide, and that information is going to be forwarded to Tier 3. 7 was an action item that was brought up last week when we talked about the E911 board planning to migrate to a rapid SOS, and there was a question about the existing data that's been accumulated, the GIS data sets that have been provided or updated. And so the question relates to, will those be migrated to Rapid SOS? So we need to confirm that. We're still investigating that.
So I have a question for Jim on this one. Jim, have you been in discussion at your center with Barb on and E911 on this transition to Rapid SOS? And have you asked about transitioning data sets that are already existing? Just curious.
No, we haven't had any notification yet, other than what I've known from prior meetings. My understanding or my assumption was all the data sets that are already in use would be migrated, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay. All right. We, Dom and I spoke on, and Elizabeth, we spoke on this item yesterday, and we're chasing it down further, but I just want to know if you knew anything that maybe we didn't know yet. So, all right, by next meeting we'll have an answer. We'll have answers on item 7 for that particular. I mean, it certainly makes sense that in transitioning to a new solution that you bring along all the data sets that you need from the previous application, but and have the ability to add more. Just want to be sure that we can share back to the group on what capabilities we're going to obtain and what ones what data sets we might not be able to transition. But I doubt that we're going to lose anything, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thanks. And item 8 was regarding the LMR systems. The action item was to capture as much data as we can on existing LMR, some of the larger systems, any upgrade plans. We know there's upgrade plans ongoing. We have gathered data on the Capital Fire upgrade plans. We have reached out to Burlington Communications to provide data for St. Johnsbury. We know they have an upgrade in process. I have received a response back from Todd Goad with Burlington that he will be providing that data, but have not had it just yet. We do also have some information on the St. Albans systems, as that was analyzed in a little more detail by MCP. And we have also requested info from Hartford. Are there others? I'll ask the working group, are there others that we should be pursuing and trying to ascertain?
I am aware that Franklin County started work on a multi-site simulcast voting system, but they essentially ran out of money after they built 3 of the sites, and then there were apparently some issues with there may have been issues with co-locating on state resources, and they ran into that hurdle. So
okay.
I actually reached out to them to try to figure out who has that information. I would assume that Todd might also know about that.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks for that, Ron.
So can we take just a couple more minutes to on this topic here? So I think we did share with you that, or maybe we didn't, but the St. Johnsbury in this conversation with Colin Gillespie, we discovered that they have an upgrade ongoing too, and they may have got the last of the DHS funding because we had a conversation with them. They got funding to support this upgrade. And in the programs that appeared to have been canceled in a current administration. However, they have the funding and they're advancing some new sites and upgrades to get a simulcast network. However, they can't finish it because Burlington Communication doesn't have the manpower to support the finish it. So it's been delayed. It's in a holding pattern for, I don't know all the details, but we have started dialogue with Todd. We know him well, and we'll get some more insights from him. But what it comes down to is that, even, in our current environment, our radio shop professionals that we rely on don't have the capacity to, fast track some of these projects because they have a limitation in their own labor pool. So, this is, we had taken notes along the way and documenting, we have our own internal documentation of items and, how do we help our radio shops, get the staff that they need? I mean, clearly there is they have outright concerns. We'll talk more about it with Todd when we get back together with him. But there's a reality here that we have to face is that even in our current environment, with with funding in hand, we may not be able to advance our network upgrades as quickly as we would like because of a professional labor pool shortage within that community. And I want you to be aware of it. We have taken note of that before, but it's a reality that we face.
That's true, absolutely. So this action item will be ongoing for a while, certainly, but we'll continue to work it as we get additional information. That concludes the review of the existing action items. And now we can address some of the new work, the couple of remaining items we have. First, we'll go over the this is what we talked about last week. We talked about the public safety LMR. These are the key insights. We went over the various options. I've captured there where I think we are based on the discussion last week. There was general consensus to consider option 2, potentially focused on the catchment areas of the dispatch centers as opposed to just the county borders. And that's ongoing as we try and map out the existing systems and plans that are in place. Any further discussion on this before we move on? Okay, next would be the VCOM, and there's I captured the key insights and trends from the system planning document. I don't think we need to review these in detail. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that, or we've had previous discussions, but there were certainly a number of challenges and restrictions when putting the VCOM system together based on power restrictions, of course, because of the proximity to Canada. And these are, of course, national frequencies that are used elsewhere in neighboring states as well. And there was, so the way the system was developed, the channels were left off at the various sites, and users had to follow a process to enter DTMF code to get channels turned on. That turned out to be very cumbersome, and essentially the system is not really in use or used very infrequently right now. So MCP looked at the potential for utilizing VCOM in the future and provided several recommendations. These are the recommendations MCP has provided to try and modify the VCOM system so that it would be more usable and meet its original purpose. I'll give you a minute to go through these. They are, replace existing radios because and refresh antennas and lines. The equipment is aged and near end of life. They recommend transitioning the VHF stations to repeaters because they are currently single frequency simplex type approach. That means changing the frequencies that are used. So they would have to be different frequencies that are defined nationwide to be used for interoperability in a repeated mode. Recommending that moving forward, these repeaters and receivers would remain enabled so they'd be able to be contacted by users in the field. Obviously, if we're changing frequencies, then all user radios would need to be reprogrammed and put into the correct mode. That's obviously a significant endeavor. And of course, a lot of this relates to training as well. So there'd have to be additional training for the users and dispatchers as to how to utilize this network based on the recommended changes they have and on the the nationwide protocol to use the network. What are the working group's thoughts with VCOM? Is it I guess one of the basic questions is it worth putting additional investment into this system, given that currently it's not it's used very infrequently, if at all?
I would disagree with their recommendations, like from one end to the other. I think putting any more money into that system is a ridiculous waste of money and a ridiculous waste of time and resources. As I understand, the original investment was about $13 million. And then as I understand it, the total investment to date has basically doubled that amount of money. Had that amount of money been spent on sitting down and creating regionalized systems that actually are useful to people, like we'd be way ahead of ourselves at this point. So I think that the system should just be like deactivated and taken apart to make space for other things on those towers and make it easier for people to clean the floors in those various sites, so they don't have to do it around the racks occupied by the Lifeline system.
Michael, Jim?
Agree. I agree 100% with Ron. It's such a waste of money. The system has done nothing for certainly EMS and fire. I don't know what law enforcement really. I don't think they use it either. You can't access it. No one uses it. Money can be way better spent updating an actual radio infrastructure that we all could use with. And the other issue too is this the frequency thing with Canada. I've been in the system 30 years. 20 years ago, we tried getting a frequency change on Burke Mountain to improve the northern end of our coverage area. And we were competing where our frequency is the same frequency as a taxi cab in downtown Montreal. And they would not approve anything over 40 watts, I believe. And so that is I don't know how we navigate the whole Canadian thing in the FCC, but you would think public safety ought to be able to trump a taxi cab in downtown Montreal, and they could move to a different frequency, right, and allow us to have 100-watt access on a mountaintop under that same frequency. But 20 years, they tried that repeatedly to try to get improvement with coverage in our own coverage area on that frequency, just moving a tower up there, and we could never do it. So, any sort of relicensing with the FCC is going to be unbelievably problematic. And I assume we're probably going to have to do something regardless of what system that we develop, I guess. But everyone needs to know, I guess, that that's not an easy undertaking, and that could be years just to get, whoever the IT person that's going to figure out, the system and what frequencies we're going to need. That's going to take a long time. But the VCOM I agree with Ron, utter waste of time.
I'm going to have to agree with Ron for some of the same reasons that I've seen here in some of the comments. As Michelle put, don't believe anybody in their PSAP has used it after the initial training. And, Martha has VCOM as cost prohibitive for agencies and wasn't used. Here again, she agrees with Ron, and I agree. We haven't used it. It hasn't been of any benefit for us in any way, shape, or form. Same from Liz.
All right, sounds like it's consensus then. It doesn't warrant any further investment moving forward with VCOM. And Rick and I discussed this yesterday as well. I'd like to point out that certainly this is intended to be an interoperability network. We do recommend that one of the advantages in the state is that essentially all fire and EMS operate on VHF frequencies and law enforcement on UHF. So to the point that regional systems can be developed, each of these agencies would have the capability for interoperability just by sharing their neighbors' frequencies on their neighboring systems. And that would hopefully fill the need for mutual aid and interoperability.
I think part of the focus of the VCOM system, which I never really could wrap my head around, was this sort of idea that everybody needs to be able to talk to everybody all at the same time. And realistically speaking, if we were to look at this as a whole, you know, the land mobile communications and the dispatching and the, you know, statewide CAD system, and our goal to have a system that is got redundancy and you know, fall back to other locations and things, it would be easy enough to put into that mix the idea that the regional systems could be cross-patched if we do need to talk to each other. So the idea that we need to have, like, you know, a bunch of wires all connected all over to the state to you know, have multiple transmitters in different places that exist solely for the purpose of us all to talk to each other all at the same time is really kind of ridiculous.
Understood, Ron. I think certainly another purpose of VCOM and the national interoperability channels in general is to allow a common frequency for when you have mutual aid from outside of the state as well, from other users potentially. And I don't know if that's a common occurrence in Vermont or if that generally does not occur.
Well, I can kind of answer to that a little bit. You know, we in my community we work with you know, CBP agents on a regular basis, and CBP's technology group reached out, and we have an MOU in place for them to be able to use our frequency.
Okay.
So they are actively you know, looking into the ability to work with local fire, EMS, and law enforcement agencies. On the other side of the spectrum, we also work a lot with Clinton County, New York. And my town happens to be part of their mutual aid system, so we have radios that are on their system, but they have no capabilities whatsoever to talk on VHF at all. They're all on their, you know, 800 megahertz trunk system. So if they come here, you know, they can talk to us, they can talk to one other community, but that's it. So, you know, their ability to use any of the interoperable frequencies that we can use is also not there.
Well, yeah, thanks for that clarification. That's helpful.
Hey, I have actually done a lot of research on this item here, and I want to share an interesting document that I found. Dom, can I share this file?
Certainly, I'll stop sharing and you can take over.
So there was a presentation that was made, and maybe some of you were there. Say maybe some of you weren't. Now let me know when you can see my screen.
Not yet. There it is.
Got it.
Okay, so I want to be sure that we learn from this. It was a pretty expensive mistake, and we need to learn from it going forward. So this was a presentation made, and I don't have a date on it, but this presentation was made, and one of the things that, this is kind of the second slide. So here's a presentation of ECOM initiative. It says the Interoperable Communication Network, a communication lifeline program for those who protect lives. So there's a good intention behind it. And then, they start out where I think good governance is in an organizational chart. So there's a chair, there's a steering community, and there's advisory community, and then there's institutional, operational, and technical committee. And so, there was a plan for managing access to this, but I don't think that this was ever. I don't know what actually happened here, but
it was never implemented.
It was
that is correct. Beyond the steering committee, nothing ever happened.
All right, so this is a big mistake that we need to avoid going forward, no matter what we do, because as you said earlier, I'm sorry, I'm going to slide through this quickly. So, the frequencies were in there, and the sites were identified, and the scope of the different activities and coverage areas. And don't fall off your chair yet. I'm trying to get to this budget page. Okay, so here was the proposed budget here, $7.5 million. And, there was labor categories, a coordinator, a project manager, administrative support, and then the equipment and PSAP equipment. And, an undertaking was paid for this. This money the money that was allocated came out of a Department of Homeland Security SHIP investment here. So this came out of, a Homeland Security grant. And so this is a state Homeland Security grant program. And, and there were other, on this presentation, there was a number of items identified, but this was their proposed budget for the various funds. And then, here's the VCOM project, 7.5 million. So, whoever was responsible for managing the grant budget back at that time, obviously authorized the spending based on, the credibility that I'll put quote unquote credibility of this opportunity. And, so it seems like this went through a rigorous assessment, and then it got money. So, but we didn't do a good job of implementing it, of learning how to use it, or we made it too complicated to use. And so, we're going to talk to Corey about this, but I sure hope that the whatever remains of the infrastructure at the sites that is still usable, and I don't know the answer to that yet, but it would be potentially leveraged in this additional proposal that for VHF network on 49 of the state police radio network sites. I would sure hope that we could leverage, whatever is leverageable. Transmission lines last a long time, so they're a pretty big investment. I don't know about the antennas, but we could sweep them. So we need to be sure that we leverage this investment, because we're not using it, and we probably never did a good job using it, and we don't want to make that mistake again. And that mistake, a lot of that mistake, in my opinion, having been doing this work for Televate's whole our existence was based on interoperable communication. So we've done a lot of these kinds of programs and its governance. So, if we create a future network and we don't govern it properly, it's going to fail again. So we need to learn from these lessons. I don't disagree with, I certainly support what we've said about this radio network, but in dismantling it because it's not being used, it's impossible to use. We've looked at it, and it's operationally too cumbersome for it to be of use in a first response, unless you know in advance that you're going to have this incident, and you have to call someone to turn the channel on. Doesn't make sense. So I just wanted to share with this. I have more documents as an SOP on how to use it, and there's a lot going on here. So yeah, Ron, please.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, but I would take that one step further in that before the system was established, nobody paid. I was part of the steering committee and subsequently asked to leave because I am, quote, not a team player. The problem is that, as was pointed out, the team that I was playing for was the Vermont State Firefighters Association, and apparently I was supposed to be part of some other team that everybody neglected to tell me about. Nobody really wanted to pay attention to the way that the agencies who were supposed to benefit from the system communicate and do things now to see if this was actually going to be something that had any value whatsoever. It was just essentially, it's kind of like, the problem with telling Vermonters that they have to do things a different way than they're already doing them. That just doesn't go over very well. And this was a prime example of that. It had no value from the start, and it was a total waste of money.
Yep, I hear you. Liz just added something into the chat. I want to stop sharing.
Yeah,
She said
she
that
indicates
she
she
has
has
another
PowerPoint.
another presentation on that if you want it.
Yeah, please send
Yeah.
it along. Yeah. Yeah, I have a copy of the SOP. I mean, the documentation that you can find through. I mean, there's no one there in the government that you could ask to have these documents. Those that have taken over from previous, leadership on this, or they don't have the background or they don't know. So if you do if you search, if you do an internet search, I find what I can find, and yes, send along everything because we want to learn from it. Please do. Emily just sent something. It comes back down to following through on initiatives, and we see this a lot. Beginning in back after 9/11, the funds were flowing, except you got the capital money, but there was no operational money. So, you didn't budget money because you got, I got $10 million, I'm going to build a network, but you have no money to operate it. You can't just build anything you want and then not allocate funding for operating it. So we have to be sure that we don't make capital investments that we don't then sustain through annual operating budgets, because it will never get turned into or be what it was intended to be. And Ron, you bring up a good point, that we can't advance any technology solution without buy-in or at least customizing that to the end user requirements. If you anything we do going forward, if it's not based on stakeholder input and feedback and requirements, then these aren't prudent investments. And I think the fact that these working groups, we have an audience of responders here is invaluable, because we require their input as well as each of your task members have that knowledge. So I don't want to duplicate mistakes that we made in the past, and the sharing in this conversation is critical to avoiding that. My 3 cents.
I guess to add too is that, again, it's not user friendly at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you even go to the page on their site of how it works today, you need a dual tone multi-frequency microphone to enter a code, to enter the DTMF code, which that document is not even on this site to know what codes you would even need to enter. So again, at the end of the day, as people have transitioned into new leadership roles throughout the years, if this were to happen tomorrow, no one would know what these codes are or how to even access and open up these repeaters to make the system work. So I think that just that alone makes it not user friendly at the street level when a real incident is happening. You should be able to switch over to a zone or switch to a frequency and be able to talk, not have to enter a special code and then get permission and then wait for the dispatcher at Williston or Westminster receives the DTMF code and looks for a visually alerted light on the console to then do their next step. I would go to say that if this happened at the dispatch today at Williston or Westminster, they would have no clue of what that light is or what is happening. So it's just so clunky.
If I could summarize, then certainly, it was consensus to recommend that no further investment be put towards VCOM, but we're also saying we need to, dismantle it carefully, I guess, and understand
Salvage what we
the
can
resources
salvage.
there are. I'm sorry, Jim. What?
Salvage what we can salvage out of the
Salvage what
system.
we can salvage. Yeah, exactly. Rick, did you have another comment?
I know. I'm happy that we've come to this consensus because it's unfortunate. It had good intentions, but
Yes.
it never achieved its end objective. And unfortunately, it was as looking back on it, it was a mistake, a bad investment, and so we just need to avoid it going forward. And I don't mean it, I mean it on all levels, administratively, governance, usability, training. Don't build what we don't really need. And if we build what we need, then make sure we maintain it and monitor its use so that we can improve it over time.
Great. All right, I'm going to move back to our presentation and agenda. So moving on from VCOM, our final item to discuss is the cybersecurity item. Let me put this into presentation mode since it's difficult to read. For this item, per the plan developed by MCP, the insights and trends are shown on the left side of the screen, essentially indicating there was a lack of consistency in implementation of cybersecurity practices and processes and other insights that they identified. The last one addresses what they call a GRC, term used in the cybersecurity world for governance, risk, and compliance. So a comprehensive approach to that is something that they would recommend. And that's what are addressed in the options we see in the table on the right. There are three options. Option one is to define and implement a common statewide GRC framework. That's we could potentially look at that as a first step. Option two would be to implement automated asset management common across all agencies. And then option three was to implement continuous event and intrusion monitoring. So these appear to be somewhat addressing, the options seem to be addressing different aspects of the cybersecurity world. So it looks like it would be feasible to implement more than one of these. At least that's how I read it. Do others see similar aspects? Any thoughts on any of these options?
I agree with you. They are not options. They are individual
Seems like individual recommendations.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I think yes, and this is very complicated. I mean, there are a limited number of experts in cybersecurity, and I mean, I think whatever we do here, I wouldn't. It would likely be involved at the state level as well, because I've been reading a little bit of background on Vermont has actually got a working group or committee on cybersecurity, because this is one of these never goes away. It's you're always chasing your tail.
Exactly.
Because you could solve a problem today, and then we found a gaping hole in a Microsoft application that allows people backdoor access to things. And so, I think this needs attention. I just read a city sent a notification that they have been compromised. It was just last week. I don't know if it's Columbus, Ohio, or Cleveland or something, but and the notice went out that they've been compromised. So who knows what we're in store for? But I don't think we can ignore this.
No, we know there is some activity at the state level as we identified a current funding opportunity for state and local entities to apply for funding, federal funding to address cybersecurity. And we did contact Commissioner Morrison about that, and Jen indicated that they have a multi-year statewide plan to address that grant. So they are evaluating potential for submitting an application. So are there specific recommendations the working group wants to make to the larger task force related to cybersecurity? It would be, I think, reasonable as a baseline, certainly to look at option one to define a common statewide governance, risk, and compliance framework as option one describes.
At the very least, yes, we need to go with option one.
Thanks, Jim. Ron, Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's I think that it is definitely something that requires a top-down approach, because I think at the bottom level there are a lot of people who will simply dismiss this as being something that doesn't affect them. I think that most agencies in particular in Vermont just look at this going, we're just way too small for anybody to care about us. And I think that we definitely need to make this one of the things that should be a top-down issue.
All right, great. Thanks, Ron.
So I note that the Agency for Digital Services actually has published a policy, Information Security Foundation policy, and maybe we should understand how that plays in. Also, see, there is a Cybersecurity Council was also established, and so there's a advisory team, and so there is ongoing work here at the state level. I don't know if any of our PSAPs or dispatch centers are tied into it or receive input from them, but perhaps we should better understand. Just a thought, should we better understand this policy and whether or not we could, we're abiding by it or need to abide by it, or if it applies. I don't know if you what you think. I mean, I can go through it. It's not that big a document. It's,
I think that
18.
makes sense, certainly to review that. Is there someone from that organization that could, that we could consult with and maybe provide some recommendations for the either the working group or the task force?
Well, this document was signed off on November of 2024. John Toney, Chief Information Security Officer, Denise Riley Hughes, Secretary CIO of Digital Services. Their names are here, and then Sarah Clark, Secretary Agency Administration. So, I mean, there are names of who signed this off, and perhaps we can, get an introduction through Jen Morrison to the right people. But I'm happy to review this and provide some feedback to the group at the next meeting. It's I mean, if the state also is publishing guidelines that are beneficial to this, the local community and to our membership, then we should be tied in, and we should be leveraging whatever knowledge and support they can provide to us. And I don't think it's just for, this is not just at the dispatch radio, the 911 public safety communication level. This is, I don't know what's going on at any jurisdictional level too. So, I mean, advice to the locals from the state, because they have a team on this, makes a lot of sense. I sure hope this is what they're doing, is rolling down to the local communities, because as I mentioned last week, and we see these on occasions where you can get held hostage, for millions of dollars because someone's compromised your entire IT network.
That sounds like an action item we want to have to review that existing policy and see if we can get further direction from that team at the state level that's working in this.
As long as our task force members agree.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because I don't think in general those at the PSAP or dispatch level have this is a very specialized field, and I don't think there's many of them that have this expertise.
No.
And hey, if we give something productive for the Agency of Digital Services to do that's actually in their bailiwick, maybe they will stop screwing around with power co-location agreements.
That's right.
Yeah, they may have to sign off on it too, right? It seems like every other agency signs off on it.
Okay, that actually completes that's the last work item that this working group was to address. So we can, we talked a little bit about next steps as we were kind of getting going and talking about the schedule. Are there any other experts that we would like to consult with? We just identified to get some additional information from the Agency of Digital Services. We are actively working with Burlington Communications and others to document existing LMR systems so we can get a better look at the regional approach that is either developing or already out there. And we talked earlier about begin development of content for a full task force meeting. And of course, we are continuing to review the action items.
Would it be unreasonable? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Would it be unreasonable to figure out who could tell us over some period of years how much money we continue to pump into the Lifeline system? I think that might be a valuable piece of information to, going forward as we start recommending things that will actually cost money. It would be good to know how much we've been pumping into a useless system to compare the cost benefit analysis.
We can work with Radio Technology Services to see if they have that information. We're happy to do that. And that would actually be, and budget information is something that we need to include, of course. And the third bullet here is developing content for the full task force meeting. I believe that's something based on the discussion we've had over the last several meetings and the preliminary recommendations. I believe that's something that Televate could begin to put together and then review with the working group at the next meeting. And then, of course, refine that and modify it as necessary, and see at that point if we would need a further meeting to refine that, or if we would be to a point where we'd be ready for the task force presentation. So our goal would be then before the next meeting, before next Friday, to have preliminary content for full task force meeting. Is that is our working group members in agreement with that approach?
Yes.
That sounds reasonable.
Great. And let me go back to the original agenda here at the beginning. So I think we've kind of addressed some of those. Sorry, don't get dizzy as I'm scrolling. And there we are.
Next.
Okay. So we just discussed next steps. Our schedule for the next meeting is set. And that should be, well, we got to make sure that's on the task force website. So we'll confirm that. It's set for next, that's back to our usual time. Is that correct,
Yep.
Elizabeth? 12:30 on the 15th?
August 15th, yes.
All right, thank you. All right, Jim, I'll turn it back to you to handle last few items.
Public comment. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to the discussion?
If I could say in the background, I'm chatting with Liz and Martha about their cybersecurity approach and how they do it, and we'll follow up, with some of those. Liz and her group, they use a Top Floor, located in Middlebury, and Martha and Harper, they actually have the township has a cybersecurity expert, and they come to their facility often. So we'll talk to them to see what we can learn about what the local, centers are doing, so that we could share that back during the next meeting as well. Sorry,
I'll
Julie.
send you some information for the company that does our work.
All right. Liz is using a company called they use Top Floor. I like that's a good name, Top Floor. Nice. Okay. Sorry to intrude on that. I don't know if our public have anything to say, but I'll certainly.
Not hearing any other public comments.
I will make a motion, we adjourn.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you,
Alrighty.
everyone.
All right,
Have a
thank
great
you,
See
everyone.
you at the next meeting.
All
Rick,
right.
before you disappear, I got an agenda for the meeting at 12:30. Am I on the schedule for that? I don't want to show up to another meeting where I wasn't really invited.
Yeah, we have another one at 12:30.
Yes, you are, Ron.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You have tonight. You have time to have lunch.
I do. All right. Well, see you guys at 12:30 then.
See
Thank
see
you.
Bill.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.